The afternoon sun beat down on the local park as David wiped sweat from his forehead, watching his 10-year-old son Ben run back and forth across the soccer field. 3 years had passed since his wife's death, and these ordinary moments still held a tinge of sadness. He wished she could see how tall Ben had grown, how fast he could run now. "Good hustle, buddy," David called out as Ben blocked another kid from scoring. The coach blew his whistle for a water break, and the kids scattered toward their waiting parents. While Ben gulped down water from his blue bottle, David's attention drifted to the far side of the field. A small girl stood alone by the chain-link fence, watching the practice with unmistakable longing in her eyes. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, with messy brown hair pulled into uneven pigtails and clothes that hung loosely on her small frame. Something about her reminded David of a bird perched on the edge of something, ready to fly away at the first sign of danger. As David watched, 3 kids from Ben's team wandered over to where she stood. At first, he thought they were being friendly, but then he saw the girl's shoulders hunch forward, her head dropping down as the kids pointed and laughed. One boy tugged at her oversized t-shirt while another mimicked her stance with exaggerated movements. "Hey, garbage girl, are you wearing your brother's clothes again?" one of them called loudly enough for their voice to carry across the field. David felt a knot form in his stomach. He knew that look all too well, the desperate attempt to become invisible when you're being singled out. His own childhood had been marked by similar moments after his father lost his job, and they'd moved to a poorer neighborhood. "Dad, can I have a snack?" Ben asked, breaking David's concentration. "In a minute, buddy," David replied, his eyes still fixed on the scene by the fence. The girl was trying to walk away now, but the kids followed, their laughter growing louder. One of them snatched something from her hand, what looked like a small notebook, and held it high above his head while she jumped futilely to reach it. Without thinking, David set down Ben's water bottle.
"Stay here for a second, okay?"
"I need to check something." He crossed the field with long strides, his heart pounding with an unexpected anger. By the time he reached the fence, the girl had given up jumping for her notebook and stood with her arms wrapped around herself, eyes fixed on the ground. "Is there a problem here?" David asked, keeping his voice casual but firm. The 3 kids froze, suddenly aware of an adult's presence. The boy holding the notebook quickly lowered his arm. "We were just playing," he muttered, not meeting David's eyes. "Doesn't look much like playing to me," David replied. He held out his hand. "May I have that, please?" The boy reluctantly handed over the notebook, then glanced at his friends. "Whatever. We need to get back to practice anyway." As they scurried away, David knelt down to the girl's level. Up close, he could see the fraying edges of her t-shirt and the scuffed toes of her sneakers, held together with duct tape on one side. Her cheeks were flushed with embarrassment, and she kept her gaze firmly on the ground. "I believe this is yours," he said gently. Offering the notebook, she reached for it quickly, clutching it to her chest like a shield. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice so soft he barely heard it. "I'm David," he said. "My son Ben is on the team." "What's your name?" For a moment he thought she might not answer, but then she looked up briefly. "Lily," she replied. "Nice to meet you, Lily. Do you like soccer?" A tiny nod, then another quick glance up at him. "Do you play on a team?" Lily shook her head, her fingers tightening around her notebook. "No, I can't. We don't have money for that." The simple honesty of her answer hit David hard. Many kids would have made up an excuse, but Lily stated the painful truth without embellishment. "So you come to watch the practices?" he asked, another nod. "I like to learn the moves. I practice at home with the ball I found." David noticed Ben had wandered over, curious about what was keeping his dad. "Ben, this is Lily. She likes soccer too." Ben, usually shy around new people, smiled easily. "Hi, do you play forward or defense?" Lily blinked, surprised by the friendly question. I'm not sure. I've never played on a real team. But you know how to play, right?" Ben asked. "I think so. I watch a lot." A small smile flickered across Lily's face, the first David had seen. The coach blew his whistle again, signaling the end of the break. "I should go," Ben said, already backing toward the field. "Go ahead, I'll be watching," David told him, then turned back to Lily. "Those kids who were bothering you, does that happen a lot?" Lily shrugged, trying to seem casual, but David could see the hurt in her eyes. "Sometimes. They say I shouldn't be here if I'm not on the team, and they make fun of my clothes." "Well, they're wrong," David said firmly. "The park belongs to everyone, and clothes are just clothes." They don't tell anyone who you really are. Something in Lily's expression shifted, as if she'd never considered this idea before. "Do you come here by yourself?" David asked, concerned about a child so young being alone. "My grandma drops me off on her way to her second job," Lily explained. "She picks me up after. She works a lot." David glanced around. "Is she your guardian?" Lily nodded. "My parents are gone. Mom left when I was little. Dad dropped me at Grandma's last year and said he'd be back, but—" Her voice trailed off, but the rest of the story was clear enough. The familiar ache of being left behind resonated deeply with David. After his wife's sudden death, he'd struggled with how to explain to Ben that sometimes people leave and don't come back, whether they want to or not. "My wife died 3 years ago," David found himself saying. "It's just been Ben and me since then." Lily's eyes widened slightly. "You're all alone too?" "Not alone," David corrected gently. "We have each other. And sometimes that's enough to get through the hard days." Lily considered this, nodding slowly. "Grandma says we're a team." "Smart lady," David smiled. "Teams look out for each other." The practice was wrapping up now, kids gathering equipment while parents chatted nearby. Lily began to step back, sensing their time was ending. "Will you be here for Thursday's practice too?" David asked. She hesitated. "Probably. I usually come to all of them." "Good," David said. "Maybe Ben and I will see you then." As he rejoined Ben and they headed to the car, David couldn't shake the image of Lily standing alone by the fence. Something about her quiet resilience, her determination to learn soccer by just watching, struck a chord deep within him. "Who was that girl, Dad?" Ben asked as they drove home. "Her name is Lily. She loves soccer but doesn't have a team." Ben was quiet for a moment. "She seemed nice." "And sad." "Yeah, buddy. I think she is both of those things." That night after Ben was asleep, David sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea thinking about Lily. About her worn clothes and taped shoes. About the notebook she'd protected so fiercely. About the grandmother working 2 jobs to keep them afloat. He knew what it was like to struggle, to count every dollar, to worry about having enough. Before his programming career took off, there had been months where he'd skipped meals so Ben could eat properly. Times when he'd had to choose between paying for electricity or buying new shoes his growing son needed. Outside, rain began to fall, pattering against the windows in a gentle rhythm. David wondered if Lily's home was warm and dry tonight, if she had enough to eat, if anyone was helping her with homework or reading her a bedtime story. The decision wasn't really a decision at all, but more of a recognition, a clarity that settled over him as the rain fell harder outside. He couldn't walk away from this child, not when a small kindness might make such a big difference. David didn't know exactly what he would do yet, but he knew he had to do something. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he would find a way to help. The next morning, David woke earlier than usual. He sat at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. His mind was still full of thoughts about the little girl from the soccer field. "Dad, why are you up so early?" Ben appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. David smiled. "Just thinking, buddy. Want some breakfast?" As they ate cereal together, David carefully approached the subject. "Remember that girl we met yesterday, Lily?" Ben nodded, milk dripping from his spoon. "The one who likes soccer but doesn't have a team?" "That's right. I've been thinking about her situation. It doesn't seem fair that some kids can play sports and others can't just because of money, does it?" Ben frowned thoughtfully. "No, that's not fair at all. What would you think if we tried to help her?" David asked, watching his son's reaction closely. Ben's face lit up. "Could we really? How?" "I'm not sure yet, but I was thinking maybe we could find out how much it costs to join the league and get the things she needs." "Like soccer cleats and shin guards?" "Exactly," David nodded. "But I wanted to talk to you first because it might mean we'd have to give up something else. Maybe we'd need to wait a bit longer to get that new video game system you've been wanting." David held his breath, waiting for disappointment to cloud his son's features. At 10 years old, Ben was at that age where toys and games seemed like the most important things in the world. But instead, Ben shrugged easily. "That's okay. We can wait. Mom always said helping others is more important than stuff." A lump formed in David's throat. "She did say that, didn't she? She'd be really proud of you right now." After dropping Ben at school, David made a detour on his way to work. The community center where the soccer league was based was just opening as he pulled into the parking lot. Inside, he found the recreation office and explained his situation to the program director, a kind-faced woman named Patty. "So there's this girl who watches all the practices," he concluded. "She clearly loves the game but can't afford to join. I'd like to cover her registration fees, but I'm not sure how to approach her grandmother about it." Patty leaned back in her chair, considering. "We actually have a scholarship program for cases like this. It's not widely advertised because our funding is limited, but it sounds like Lily would qualify." "That would be great," David said, relief washing over him. "But I'm happy to pay, really." "Tell you what," Patty suggested. "Why don't you invite Lily and her grandmother to come meet with me? I can explain the program, and they might feel more comfortable accepting help if it's presented as a league initiative rather than charity from a stranger." David thanked her and headed to work, his mind already planning what he would say to Lily when he saw her again at Thursday's practice. The day passed in a blur of coding and meetings, but his thoughts kept drifting to the quiet girl with the tattered notebook. Thursday afternoon arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze. Perfect soccer weather. David arrived early for Ben's practice, scanning the area for any sign of Lily. At first he didn't see her and his heart sank with disappointment. But then he spotted her sitting cross-legged under a tree at the far corner of the field, her notebook open on her lap. "Hey, Ben, there's Lily," David pointed. "Why don't you go say hi while I talk to Coach Mike?" Ben ran over to the tree while David approached the coach, quickly explaining his plan to help Lily join the team. Coach Mike's weather-beaten face broke into a wide smile. "That's a fantastic idea," he said. "We could use more players with genuine passion for the game. Too many kids are here just because their parents make them come." After speaking with the coach, David joined Ben and Lily under the tree. She seemed more relaxed today, showing Ben drawings of soccer plays she'd created in her notebook. "These are really good," David said, genuinely impressed by the detailed diagrams. "You've been studying the game carefully." Lily ducked her head, but he caught the small smile that flitted across her face. "I like figuring out how things work." "Lily," David began carefully, "I spoke with the people who run the soccer league this morning. They have a special program for kids who want to play but need some help with the fees and equipment." Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't say anything. "Would you be interested in actually joining the team instead of just watching?" he asked. I don't know," she whispered, closing her notebook. "I've never played with other kids before, and Grandma couldn't drive me to games and stuff. She works a lot." "That's something we could figure out," David assured her. "Ben and I come to every practice and game. We could easily give you rides." Lily looked at him with a mixture of hope and suspicion, as if waiting for the catch. "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." The question, so direct and honest, caught David off guard. Why was he doing this? He barely knew this child. Yet something about her situation had lodged in his heart, demanding action. "Because someone once helped me when I needed it," he said finally. "When Ben was a baby and his mom got sick, people from our community stepped up. They brought us meals, helped with doctor appointments, even mowed our lawn. I never forgot that kindness. Sometimes people just help each other because they can." Lily absorbed this, fidgeting with the edge of her notebook. "I'd have to ask my grandma." "Of course," David nodded. "In fact, I was hoping to meet her. Do you think she could come a little early to pick you up today?" "Maybe. I can call her from the office phone." The community center staff let Lily use their phone, and to David's relief, her grandmother agreed to come early. As practice wrapped up, a tired-looking older woman approached from the parking lot. She had the same brown hair as Lily, now streaked with gray, and a face lined with years of hard work. Despite her obvious exhaustion, she carried herself with dignity. "That's my grandma," Lily said, waving. David introduced himself, explaining about the scholarship program as they walked to a bench away from the busy field. Lily's grandmother, who introduced herself as Rose, listened attentively, her worn hands folded in her lap. "It's very kind of you to look out for Lily," she said when he finished, "but we're not looking for charity." "It's not charity, Mrs. Johnson," David assured her. "The league has funding specifically for this purpose. They want all kids to have the opportunity to play." "And you'd drive her to practices?" Rose asked skeptically. "A stranger offering rides to my granddaughter. You understand why that might concern me?" David nodded, appreciating her caution. "Absolutely. You're right to be careful. Why don't you and Lily come to our house for dinner this weekend? You can meet my son properly, see where we live. I can show you my driver's license, work ID, whatever would make you comfortable. The league director would also be happy to meet with you. Rose studied him for a long moment, then glanced at Lily, who was watching them with barely concealed hope. We could do Saturday, she said finally. Lily, what do you think? I'd like that, Lily whispered, a rare smile spreading across her face. David wrote down his address and phone number, promising to call with more details about the dinner. As they parted ways, he felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and nervousness. He was stepping into something bigger than he'd initially planned, opening his home and life to strangers. But watching Ben and Lily wave goodbye to each other, something told him he was on the right path. Saturday evening arrived with a flurry of activity as David and Ben prepared for their guests. They cleaned the small house, Ben proudly showing David how well he'd tidied his room, in case Lily wants to see my soccer trophies. David had prepared a simple but hearty meal: spaghetti and meatballs, garlic bread and a fresh salad. Nothing fancy, but filling and hopefully welcoming. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock. Rose stood on the porch in what was clearly her good outfit, a clean blouse and pressed slacks, while Lily hovered nervously beside her, clutching a small paper bag. These are for you, Lily said shyly, handing Ben the bag as they entered. Grandma and I made them. Inside were homemade cookies, slightly misshapen but smelling wonderfully of cinnamon. Awesome. Thanks, Ben exclaimed. Want to see my room? I've got all my soccer stuff there. As the kids disappeared down the hallway, David invited Rose into the kitchen, offering her a seat at the table while he finished dinner preparations. You have a nice home, she commented, looking around at the modest but comfortable space. Thanks. It's nothing fancy, but it works for us. Lily hasn't stopped talking about playing soccer since Thursday, Rose admitted, accepting the cup of coffee he offered. But I need to be honest with you. Even with the fees covered, I'm worried about the time commitment. I work as a home health aide during the day and clean offices at night. My schedule isn't flexible, David nodded, stirring the sauce. I understand completely. That's why I offered the rides. Ben and I are going to all the practices and games anyway. Rose's weathered hands wrapped around the coffee mug. It's been just Lily and me since her father dropped her off last year. He said it was temporary, just until he found work in another state, but she trailed off, shaking her head. The phone number he left doesn't work anymore. I'm sorry, David said quietly, thinking of his own son. He couldn't imagine walking away from Ben under any circumstances. We manage, Rose said firmly, but it's hard. Lily's a good girl, smart, responsible, helps around the house with O. That night after Ben had gone to bed, David sat on the back porch with a cup of tea, listening to the gentle symphony of crickets and distant traffic. The dinner with Lily and her grandmother had stirred something in him that he couldn't quite name, a mixture of purpose and melancholy, of hope and remembrance. He thought about his late wife, Annie, and how she always found ways to help others, even when they had little to spare themselves. The heart expands to fill the space you give it, she used to say. David hadn't fully understood what she meant until now. His phone buzzed with a text from his brother Tom. How's it going? Still on for fishing next weekend? David hesitated, then typed, need to rain check. Helping a kid join Ben's soccer team. Long story. 3 dots appeared, then Tom's reply. Another project? You're turning into Annie, you know. David smiled sadly. It wasn't the first time someone had compared his helping tendencies to his late wife's. After her death, he'd thrown himself into being both parents to Ben, into work, into keeping their little world running. But this felt different somehow. This wasn't about filling a void or keeping busy. This was about seeing someone who needed help and simply choosing not to look away. The following Tuesday arrived bright and clear. David left work early to pick up Ben from school, then drove to the address Rose had provided. It was in a neighborhood he rarely visited, a street lined with small aging apartment buildings and convenience stores with barred windows. Lily was already waiting outside, sitting on the steps of her building with her backpack beside her. She climbed into the car with a shy hello, her eyes wide with nervous excitement. Ready for your first practice? David asked, catching her gaze in the rearview mirror. She nodded, clutching her backpack tightly. Grandma says to thank you again for the ride. No problem at all. We're headed there anyway, right, Ben? Yeah. Ben turned in his seat to face Lily. Coach Mike is really nice. He helps new kids learn everything. At the field, David watched as Coach Mike introduced Lily to the team. Most of the kids welcomed her warmly, though he noticed the same boys who had teased her before hanging back, whispering to each other. His protective instincts flared, but he forced himself to stay on the sidelines. Lily needed to find her own place on this team, and find it she did. What Lily lacked in experience, she made up for in determination and knowledge. All those hours of watching practices, studying plays in her notebook, they showed in how quickly she grasped the drills, even if her execution was sometimes clumsy. By the end of practice, she was red-faced and sweaty, her borrowed cleats giving her blisters, but the smile on her face was radiant. "Did you see me?" she asked breathlessly as she joined David and Ben at the car. "I almost scored a goal." "You were great," David assured her, hiding his amusement at her enthusiasm over what had actually been a rather awkward shot attempt. "How do your new cleats feel?" Lily's smile dimmed slightly as she glanced down at her feet. "They hurt a little. Coach says they need to be broken in." David made a mental note to pick up some moleskin and bandages before the next practice. The league-provided equipment was basic, functional but not particularly comfortable. Perhaps he could find a better pair on sale. On the drive to Lily's apartment, she chattered excitedly about the practice, asking Ben questions about different techniques. David found himself smiling as he listened to them, Ben patiently explaining the offside rule while Lily peppered him with follow-up questions. As they pulled up to Lily's building, David was surprised to see Rose waiting outside. She usually wouldn't be home from her day job for another hour. "Grandma," Lily called, jumping out of the car. "I had my first practice. I learned how to do a scissors move and everything." Rose hugged her granddaughter, smiling over Lily's head at David. "Thank you for bringing her home. I managed to swap shifts with another aide today so I could be here." "How did it go?" David asked, stepping out of the car. "She loved it," Rose replied, her eyes following Lily as she demonstrated soccer moves for Ben on the sidewalk. "I haven't seen her this excited in a very long time." There was something in Rose's expression, a mixture of gratitude and something else. Worry, perhaps. David sensed she wanted to say more. "Is everything okay?" he asked quietly. Rose sighed, glancing to make sure Lily was still occupied with Ben. The scholarship paperwork mentioned uniforms being provided, but they won't arrive for 2 weeks. And Lily mentioned something about a team photo this Saturday. "Ah," David nodded, understanding the concern. "Don't worry about that. They always take team photos before the uniforms arrive. The kids just wear practice clothes, shorts and t-shirts." Relief washed over Rose's features. "Thank you. I was worried she'd feel out of place. Would you like to come up for some lemonade?" Rose offered suddenly. "It's the least I can do." David hesitated, not wanting to impose but sensing Rose's genuine desire to reciprocate his kindness. "We'd like that, wouldn't we, Ben?" Their apartment was small but immaculately clean. A 2-bedroom unit with worn furniture and faded curtains. What caught David's eye, though, were the books. Despite the limited space, shelves lined one wall, packed with volumes of all sizes. "Lily loves to read," Rose explained, following his gaze. "The library is our weekly treat. It's free entertainment." In the tiny kitchen, Rose poured lemonade while the kids disappeared into Lily's room. David caught a glimpse of soccer posters carefully taped to the walls, cutouts from magazines rather than store-bought ones. "I want to thank you properly," Rose said, setting a glass before him, "for everything you're doing for Lily. The soccer, the rides, all of it." "It's nothing, really," David demurred. "No," Rose shook her head firmly. "It's not nothing. When my son left Lily with me, I was already working 2 jobs to make ends meet." "Adding a child to the mix?" "Well, it's been challenging. I can provide the basics, food, shelter, love, but not much else. No extras, no luxuries." She paused, collecting herself. "Do you know what Lily told me after practice today? She said she felt like she belonged somewhere for the first time since her father left." "That's not nothing, David, that's everything." David swallowed hard, touched by her words. "She's a special kid." "Yes, she is," Rose agreed. "And she deserves more than I can give her alone. So thank you for helping to fill those gaps." From Lily's room came the sound of laughter, Ben's deeper chuckle and Lily's lighter giggle. Rose smiled, the worry lines around her eyes softening. "That sound right there. That's worth everything. As David drove home with Ben, his mind was full of their visit to Lily's apartment. He thought about the carefully maintained but obviously struggling household, about Rose's pride and determination to provide for her granddaughter, about Lily's room so sparse in toys but rich in books and imagination. "Dad?" Ben's voice broke through his thoughts. "Can we help Lily get better soccer shoes? I saw her feet have blisters." David glanced at his son, surprised and proud of his observation. "I was thinking the same thing, buddy. The ones from the league aren't very good, are they?" "No, and they're too big. She keeps tripping." That night, after Ben was asleep, David found himself browsing online for youth soccer equipment. What had started as a search for better cleats soon expanded. Proper athletic socks to prevent blisters, compression shorts for under her uniform, a water bottle with her name on it like the other kids had, a small backpack to carry her gear. The total in his cart made him pause. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was significant. Was he overstepping? Rose was clearly proud and might see this as charity rather than kindness. David closed his laptop without completing the purchase, deciding to sleep on it. But as he drifted off, his mind kept returning to the sound of Lily's laughter, to the light in her eyes when she talked about soccer, to Rose's words. She felt like she belonged somewhere. The next morning, he reopened his laptop and completed the purchase, adding express shipping. Some decisions, he realized, didn't need to be overthought. Some actions were simply right, regardless of how they might be perceived. When Thursday's practice rolled around, David arrived with a simple gift bag. "Some extra soccer gear," he explained to Rose, who had managed to come to this practice by taking an early lunch break. "Nothing fancy, just practical stuff that might make Lily more comfortable." Rose started to protest, but David cut her off gently. "Please. Ben outgrew his gear so quickly last season. It's nice to know someone will actually use these things properly." It wasn't entirely true, but it allowed Rose to accept the gift with dignity. And when Lily tried on the new cleats, properly fitted, with cushioned socks, her face lit up with such joy that any doubts David had harbored vanished completely. As practice began, David and Rose sat together on the sidelines, watching Lily join the warm-up drills with newfound confidence. "You know," Rose said quietly, "I've been trying to save for better shoes for her, putting aside a little each week. But there's always something more urgent. The electric bill, medicine when she gets sick, a new backpack for school when the old one fell apart." David nodded, understanding all too well. After Annie died, he'd struggled with similar choices, especially before his promotion. It's always a balancing act, isn't it? Needs versus wants. Exactly, Rose sighed. And sometimes things that seem like wants are actually needs. Like belonging. Like having the right equipment, so why? The Saturday morning of Lily's first official game dawned bright and clear. David loaded a cooler with orange slices and water bottles into the trunk, while Ben bounced excitedly by the car, his cleats already on his feet despite David's reminders that they'd wear out faster on concrete. "Do you think Lily's nervous?" Ben asked as they drove toward her apartment. "First games are scary." David smiled at his son's concern. "Probably. Why don't you tell her about your first game when we pick her up? Might help her feel better." Lily was waiting on the steps again, but this time Rose stood beside her. The older woman waved as they pulled up. "I swapped shifts again," she explained as Lily climbed into the back seat next to Ben. "Couldn't miss her first game." "That's great," David said, genuinely pleased. "We can give you a ride to the field." "Oh, I couldn't impose—" "It's on the way," David insisted. "Honestly, it's no trouble." As they drove to the field, Ben regaled Lily with the story of his first game, complete with dramatic reenactments of his falls and missed kicks, until she was giggling instead of looking nervous. David caught Rose's eye in the rearview mirror, sharing a smile at the children's chatter. The soccer field was already busy when they arrived, parents setting up folding chairs, kids in matching uniforms running warm-up drills, coaches organizing equipment. David noticed how Lily's steps slowed as they approached, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. "Pretty exciting, huh?" he said gently. She nodded, clutching the strap of her new gear bag. "What if I mess up in front of everyone?" "Then you'll be just like every other player out there," David assured her. "Everyone messes up. That's how you learn." Coach Mike spotted them and jogged over, clipboard in hand. "Lily, glad you made it? We're doing warm-ups over by the south goal." As Lily and Ben ran to join their teammates, David helped Rose set up a chair in the shade of a large oak tree, I haven't been to a children's sporting event since my son was little, Rose confessed, settling into the seat. I'd forgotten how energetic it all is. David laughed, looking around at the controlled chaos of parents shouting encouragement and kids racing across the field. That's one word for it. He noticed several parents glancing curiously in their direction. Lily was a new addition to the team, and her presence with Rose, who was clearly older than most of the parents, raised questions. David found himself feeling oddly protective of both of them. Let me introduce you to some of the other parents, he suggested. They're mostly a good bunch. As the teams warmed up, David walked Rose around the field, making introductions. Most parents were welcoming, if a bit reserved. Some made genuine efforts to include Rose in their conversations about school events and neighborhood happenings. One mother, Nancy, who was the unofficial team photographer, approached with her camera. "You must be Lily's grandmother," she said warmly. "I've been taking action shots of all the kids. Would it be okay to include Lily?" "Of course," Rose nodded. She'd love that. Great. I put together a little slideshow at the end of each season for the team party. Every player gets a digital copy. David watched as Rose's expression flickered, another expense she hadn't anticipated. Before she could respond, he jumped in. "That sounds wonderful. I know Lily will be thrilled." As Nancy moved away to photograph the teams lining up, Rose gave David a grateful look. These small social interactions, these unexpected costs and commitments, they were all part of the hidden curriculum of belonging that Rose was navigating alongside Lily. The game began with a shrill whistle. Lily started on the bench, watching intently as her teammates played the first quarter. David could see her lips moving slightly, rehearsing the plays, her hands occasionally mimicking the moves she observed. When Coach Mike called her name for the second quarter, she froze momentarily before Ben gave her a gentle nudge. "You got this," David heard his son say. Lily's first few minutes on the field were tentative. She hung back, clearly afraid of making a mistake. But when the ball rolled directly to her, muscle memory from all those practice sessions took over. She dribbled a few yards before passing to a teammate just as she'd been taught. "Good job, Lily," several parents called out. Rose sat forward in her chair, her hands clasped tightly together. As the game progressed, Lily grew more confident. She wasn't the most skilled player on the field, but her understanding of positioning and strategy, gleaned from all those hours of observation, was impressive. When she successfully blocked an opposing player from advancing with the ball, the sideline erupted in cheers. David found himself shouting encouragement alongside Rose, who had abandoned her usual reserve and was now standing, calling Lily's name with unrestrained pride. During halftime, as the kids huddled around Coach Mike for a pep talk, a father David knew slightly. Todd, whose son was one of the team's best players, sidled up beside him. "So what's the story with the new kid?" Todd asked, nodding toward Lily. "Scholarship case?" The term made David bristle, though he kept his expression neutral. "Her name is Lily, and yes, she's on the league's inclusion program." Todd raised his eyebrows. "Didn't realize you were related to her." "I'm not," David said simply. "Ben and I are helping with transportation since her grandmother works multiple jobs." Todd seemed to process this, looking between David and Rose, who was now chatting with Nancy about the photographs. "That's actually pretty cool of you, man. Most people wouldn't get involved like that." The comment wasn't meant to be profound, but it struck David nonetheless. Most people wouldn't get involved. It was true, and it was exactly the problem. Most people saw needs but kept walking, assuming someone else would help, or that it wasn't their place to step in. "It's not a big deal," David shrugged. "We're coming to the games anyway. An extra stop doesn't change much for us, but it makes a huge difference for them." Todd considered this, then nodded thoughtfully. "My wife works at the elementary school. Says they have a bunch of kids who'd love to do sports but can't afford the fees or equipment. We've got a garage full of old cleats my kids have outgrown." David recognized the opening for what it was. "You know, I'm actually talking to the league about expanding their scholarship program. Donations of used equipment would be incredibly helpful." By the time the second half started, Todd had promised to bring his family's outgrown sports equipment to the next practice and to mention the program to other parents he knew. On the field, the game had intensified. The opposing team scored twice in quick succession, and David could see the frustration building among their players. Ben, always competitive, was red-faced with effort as he defended their goal. With just minutes left in the game, Lily found herself with the ball again. This time, instead of immediately passing, she saw an opening and took it, dribbling toward the goal with surprising speed. The sidelines went quiet, then erupted in shouts of encouragement as she approached the goal box. "Shoot!" Ben yelled from across the field. Lily hesitated for just a second, then kicked. The ball sailed through the air, curving slightly, and then miraculously slipped past the goalie's outstretched hands into the net. For a moment, Lily stood perfectly still, as if she couldn't believe what had happened. Then her teammates swarmed her, Ben leading the charge with a whoop of excitement. On the sidelines, Rose had both hands pressed to her mouth, tears shining in her eyes. David found himself cheering so loudly his voice cracked, high-fiving parents around him who seemed equally thrilled by the unexpected goal. It didn't change the game's outcome. They still lost 4-1, but that hardly mattered. As the teams lined up to shake hands after the final whistle, Lily's face shone with a happiness that transcended the score. "Did you see that?" she gasped, running to Rose and David after the team huddle. "Did you see what I did?" "We saw," Rose assured her, pulling her granddaughter into a tight hug. "We saw everything." Coach Mike approached, grinning broadly. "Not bad for a first game, Lily. That was some goal." As they gathered their things to leave, Nancy appeared with her camera. "I got it," she exclaimed, showing them the display screen. "The perfect shot, right as the ball left her foot. I'll email it to you." David quietly provided his email address when Rose hesitated, promising to forward the photos to her. The parking lot was busy with families loading equipment and tired children into cars. David noticed several parents who had previously ignored Rose now stopping to congratulate her on Lily's performance. Small bridges being built one interaction at a time. "Lunch to celebrate?" David suggested as they reached the car. "There's a pizza place just down the road that all the teams go to after games." Rose hesitated, and David recognized the mental calculation happening behind her eyes. The unexpected expense. The question of whether they belonged in this ritual. "My treat," he added casually. "Ben and I always go after games. It's tradition." It wasn't exactly a tradition yet, but he decided then and there to make it one. The pizza restaurant was crowded with soccer families, the air filled with excited chatter about the morning's games. David secured a booth while Ben proudly led Lily to the table, still rehashing her goal in exaggerated detail for anyone who would listen. "Your son is very kind," Rose observed as they watched the children. "The way he celebrates her success instead of being jealous, that's rare." "Ben's a good kid," David agreed. "But I think Lily brings out the best in him too. He's more pat-explaining thinful." 6 months passed in a blur of soccer practices, games, homework sessions, and shared meals. Spring turned to summer and summer faded into autumn, painting the soccer fields with fallen leaves that crunched underfoot during practice drills. On a crisp October morning, David stood on the sidelines of Field 3, but he wasn't just watching Ben and Lily play anymore. His attention was divided between 3 different games happening simultaneously. As he checked on the progress of what people had started calling the Bridge program, what had begun with Lily had expanded beyond anything David had initially imagined. The team's equipment drive, sparked by Todd's comment about outgrown cleats, had collected enough gear to outfit 15 children from Lily's neighborhood. Those 15 kids were now playing across various teams in the league, their transportation arranged through an intricate carpool system organized via a group chat of 32 parents. "Quite a view, isn't it?" Patty from the recreation department said, joining David with a clipboard in hand. "When you first came to my office about Lily, I never expected all this," David smiled, watching as one of the new players, a shy boy named Miguel who had been watching games from the sidelines just like Lily once did, scored his first goal. The cheers from his team and their parents were deafening. "Neither did I," he admitted. "It just sort of grew." And grown it had. After his conversation with Rose about middle school options, David had approached his company about corporate sponsorship for youth programs. To his surprise, his boss had been enthusiastically supportive, allocating funds for sports scholarships and establishing a mentorship program for older kids interested in technology careers. Other parents from Ben's team had contributed their own professional skills. Nancy, the photographer, now documented all Bridge program events, creating materials that helped secure additional funding. Todd's wife, the teacher, had established a homework help program that met twice weekly in the community center before practice. A father who worked as a physical therapist offered free injury assessments for all players. The middle school principal called. Patty mentioned casually. She's interested in coordinating with us next year. Says the Bridge kids who entered 6th grade this fall are thriving, especially Lily. Pride swelled in David's chest at the mention of Lily's success. Her application to Ben's middle school had not only been accepted, but had earned her a spot in the advanced math program. The quiet girl who had once stood alone by a fence was now a straight-A student, a solid soccer player, and a budding referee who earned money officiating games for younger children. Rose must be thrilled, Patty added. She is. David nodded. The flexibility in her work schedule has made a huge difference. That had been another unexpected development. When the owner of David's company learned about Rose's situation, her skill as a home health aide and her dedication to her granddaughter, he had connected her with his elderly mother, who needed part-time care. The position paid better than Rose's previous jobs combined, with regular daytime hours that allowed her to be home when Lily returned from school. On the field, the whistle blew, signaling the end of the first game. Parents and players began to shift, some heading home while others arrived for the next round of matches. David recognized many faces now, not just from Ben's team but from throughout the community that had formed around the Bridge program. "David," a voice called. He turned to see Rose approaching, thermos in hand. Unlike the tired, careworn woman he'd first met, she now moved with energy and purpose. Her gray hair styled neatly, her clothes simple but unworn. "Perfect timing," he greeted her. "Ben's game is just about to start." Rose handed him a cup of hot coffee from her thermos. "Thought you might need this. You've been here since 7, haven't you?" "The U8 teams needed a referee substitute," David explained sheepishly. "And I wanted to check on the new kids." Rose shook her head fondly. "Always taking care of everyone." They walked together toward Field 2 where Ben's team was warming up. At 12, Ben had shot up several inches, all gangly limbs and boundless energy. He was a solid midfielder now, known for his unselfish passing and team-oriented play. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you," Rose said as they found seats in the stands. "I got a call from Lily's father last week." David tensed. In all their months of friendship, Lily's absent father had rarely been mentioned. What did he want? "To see her," Rose sighed. "He's back in town, claims he's got a steady job now, an apartment, says he wants to be part of her life again." "How do you feel about that?" David asked carefully, noting the conflicted expression on Rose's face. Confused, angry, hopeful, scared. She looked out at the field, where Lily was helping a younger player adjust her shin guards. "She's doing so well now. She's settled, happy. I worry about disrupting that." "Has he met with her yet?" Rose shook her head. "I told him I needed time to think about it, to prepare her." She paused, then added quietly, "I wanted to talk to you first." The trust implicit in that statement touched David deeply. Over the months, his friendship with Rose had grown alongside the children's bond, evolving into a partnership based on mutual respect and shared purpose. "Whatever happens," David said firmly, "it doesn't change what we've built here. This community, these connections, they're real and they're lasting. Lily will always have this support system, no matter what role her father plays going forward." Rose nodded, visibly relieved. "That's what I needed to hear. That we won't lose all this." "Never," David promised. The referee whistled for the teams to take their positions. Ben and Lily jogged past, bumping fists in their customary pre-game ritual. "Look at them," Rose marveled. "Remember how shy she was around him at first? Now they're like brother and sister." Indeed, the bond between the children had deepened over the months. They bickered like siblings, defended each other fiercely, and shared a shorthand communication that sometimes left adults struggling to keep up. Ben had become protective of Lily, while she challenged him intellectually, pushing him to work harder in school. As the game began, David noticed a cluster of unfamiliar adults at the far end of the field. They wore business attire, suits and dresses that stood out among the casual clothes of soccer parents. "The visitors from the State Youth Sports Commission," Patty explained, appearing beside David again. "They're here to learn about the Bridge program. Apparently word has spread about our little experiment." David raised his eyebrows in surprise. They want to replicate it? Several communities have expressed interest. They're calling it a cost-effective model for increasing access to youth sports while building cross-community connections. Fancy words for kids playing soccer together. But it was more than that. David knew. It was about breaking down the invisible barriers that separated neighborhoods. About recognizing talent and potential in unexpected places. About children learning early that differences in economic circumstances didn't define a person's worth. At halftime, David was introduced to the visitors. He found himself describing how the program had evolved organically, emphasizing that its success depended not on grand plans but on many small acts of inclusion. Parents adding an extra child to their carpool, coaches allocating time to work with new players, children making space for newcomers at lunch tables and birthday parties. The real magic, he concluded, is that everyone benefits. The kids who needed access to sports get to play, yes, but the existing teams gain talented players. The parents expand their networks and support systems. The whole community grows stronger. One of the visitors, a woman with a practical air and a notebook full of questions, seemed particularly interested. And this all started with just one child? One family deciding to help? That's right, David nodded. Sometimes that's all it takes. One person choosing not to look away. After the visitors departed, promising to stay in touch about potential funding opportunities, the day's final games concluded. Parents and children began the familiar routine of gathering equipment, picking up trash, and organizing carpools home. David watched as Lily helped load soccer balls into mesh bags while Ben collected discarded water bottles for recycling. Without being asked, they had taken on these responsibilities weeks ago, setting an example that other children had gradually followed. Pizza to celebrate the wins? David suggested as Rose joined them. Saturday pizza had indeed become a tradition, expanding to include other families from the Bridge program on a rotating basis. Actually, Rose said with an enigmatic smile, I have a different idea today, a surprise for everyone. She led them to her car, a modest but reliable used vehicle she'd been able to purchase with her improved income, and drove them to a part of town David rarely visited. Here, small businesses lined the streets, their signs in a mix of English and Spanish. My old neighborhood, Rose explained as they parked in front of a small storefront with steamed-up windows. A hand-painted sign read Gloria's Kitchen. Inside, the restaurant was warm and fragrant with the smell of home cooking. An older woman who bore a striking resemblance to Rose, perhaps a sister, greeted them with hugs and rapid Spanish that made Lily giggle and respond in kind. My cousin Gloria, Rose introduced her. She's been asking to meet my soccer family for months. Soccer family. The term set